See, that to me is the difference between learning something for YouTube and learning something on a stream. To me, the stream is so much more fun because I can play it, I can make a few mistakes and be like, oh, that was great. Oh, we could try it again. Or maybe I'll just be like, okay, that was the last time I'll ever play that. And then move on to something else. Whereas on YouTube, you have to practice those rhythms. You have to practice the coordination, the lineup of the left and the right to be accurate. And to me, it's harder, it's more tedious, it's not as fun.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 114 of Rhythm Encounter, the RPG fan music podcast. I'm your host, Patrick, and joining me today is my wonderful co-host, Hilary.
Hi.
As well as our special guest, Kara Comparetto.
Hello.
Yay! So, welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about performance-driven video game music covers. And of course, we're going to be focusing on the contributions that Kara has brought to us via YouTube, Twitch, and streaming audio platforms. We're going to be focusing on how not just the piano, but many keyboard-based instruments, whether it's an electronic keyboard or a pipe organ or a harpsichord, are so versatile and so useful in creating and rearranging game music. But first, Kara, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm interested in how you got started with music and how you got started with streaming your music performance.
Well, the streaming came many, many, many years later, but I guess if I want to start from the beginning, I grew up with music all in my house because my father was a piano tuner and a piano technician. And of course, his mother was also a musician. She was an organist and a pianist as well. So I have music running in my family, and my parents don't play the piano at all, but they raised me and my sister and my brother to play the piano. So I've been playing the piano my whole life. And then later on, I guess I started to, I'm getting a little bit too far ahead. Let's start with me kind of going through my teaching experience and my teachers that taught me very well, which they one of the biggest things that I learned was how to sight read, and my teacher would teach me a lot about reading music, and we would just go through lots and lots of different pieces of music all the time. And so by the time I was 18, I had learned how to sight read really well. And of course, that's benefited me a lot in my streaming because I do a lot of live learns on my channel. And then the music, the video game stuff came from playing video games. So my brother and I played video games together all the time as a kid, and he eventually inspired me to start making covers of video game music. And so that's how it started.
So as a gamer playing games, in your childhood and your teen years with your brother, I'm wondering, what are some of the games that you were most drawn to, or some of your favorite games from your childhood?
Well, it's kind of funny because I never was an RPG fan, though I did love Chrono Trigger. That was one of my favorite games. That was probably one of the only RPGs I played as a kid. And the story behind that is that my mom was a teacher at a high school, and she confiscated the game from one of her students because he was misbehaving or something. And so it ended up in our car because she had brought it home, and it never got back to him. And so we ended up playing it, and that's how we got into RPGs. My brother had a PlayStation, but I was young, I was too little, and he would play Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy VIII. I remember him playing a lot of, but it wasn't my thing. I think I was just more into the Nintendo games. I loved Donkey Kong and Mario and Kirby. Those were my favorite games, platformers. But the music, of all of these games definitely became part of my career.
Oh, that's great. And to think it all started with Contraband Chrono Trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the PlayStation version, or was it the DS version that y'all got a hold of?
I must have been was it for Super Nintendo?
Oh wow, the original
The
SNES
original.
cartridge?
Oh yeah, I'm old enough for that.
Nice. Nice. That makes me happy. I love that story. Contraband Chrono Trigger. I think that might be the new title for this episode.
I'm okay with it if Kara is.
I love it. So, one of the things that a lot of your viewers on YouTube seem to respond positively to, and I know for myself, I always get excited when I see this, is you do a fair bit of cosplay with some of your performances. And I'm wondering how that came to be. Like, where'd you get the idea? Do you have a fondness for cosplaying outside of, musical performance? How did that all get started?
So to your last question, or your second to last question, absolutely not. I didn't know anything about cosplay when I first started cosplaying. And when I did make costumes in the old days, they were, what do you call it, closet cosplay? And so I would just grab things from my closet that looked like these characters from video games. And of course, people loved that, that made the video, it gave it, that extra step up from the average videos that were going up on YouTube at the time. And of course, it became more and more sophisticated. I started to make my own costumes and do, make the cape for Kefka, for instance, or I actually knit the costume for Ayla out of this faux fur yarn. So I started to get a little more creative because I definitely have a crafty side. And I had seen there's a pianist named Purple Scala. I'm sure you guys have heard of her before. And she does absolutely beautiful cosplays. And so I think she was definitely an inspiration in my journey into cosplay.
Yeah, speaking of being very sort of like hands-on and crafty, and we're going to get to this a bit later, but I know that you do limited production, like CD runs, physical copies of some of your works. I think you've released maybe like 7 albums now. Do I have that right?
Oh, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, and for some of them you released digital only, and some of them there's physical copies. And I know that, those that you do, there's a lot of, sort of work by hand on that.
Yes, but it makes it part of the fun. I've enjoyed doing that and just making it look more authentic, and especially with Chrono Trigger, which, has always been my favorite game. I wanted to do those costumes. I wanted to make them beautiful, and it was just a pleasure to be able to do that and to, make a real Luca and make a real Marl that, for people to be able to experience that realness of those characters.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, 2 of the characters that I think a lot of people have seen from you is a while back. I don't remember how far back. You did a full performance of the entire 4-part Dancing Mad, the final battle from Final Fantasy VI, where one version of you, I think this is you on the piano, is Terra.
Correct.
And then on the organ, you were Kefka.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break and play a portion. We're not going to play the entire thing because it, as many people know, it is a very, very long song. We're going to pull a portion of, Kara's performance of Dancing Mad, and then we'll be back to talk about it. All right, so that was a portion of Dancing Mad. You got to hear the sort of Baroque fugue organ section, and then the transition into the final part of the giant tower, where it's Kefka himself, and that's when the piano kicks back in alongside the organ. So first of all, I gotta say, I've heard dozens of versions of Dancing Mad over the years, over the decades, and it's one of my favorite Uematsu pieces. It's essentially 4 songs, not one. It's sort of a 4 movement piece for the final battle, and there's so much to love about it. But I think what I love most about your arrangement is sort of the efficacy of using these 2 specific instruments. The piano sort of gives this percussive sound that stands in place for like the drum part at the end, and then the organ is already naturally present in the song, and so it was just really fitting. I'm interested in hearing a bit about your process, about the arrangement work, how much of that was you, how much of it was other people. I know that there are you both have fan submissions, and then other people also help collaborate with you on that. And also just what did you think when you were preparing to make this video and record this song?
Well, I had never played Final Fantasy VI before until I played it on Twitch for the first time. I guess it was maybe a little bit before I started making that arrangement. And I ended up loving the game. I feel like if I had played that game as a kid, I would have absolutely loved it as much as I loved Chrono Trigger. That scene in the opera house is just, I think, one of the best scenes in video game history. It's just an amazing portion of the game.
I'm glad you liked it so much.
Yeah, absolutely iconic. Very memorable.
And of course, I love old graphics and all that stuff. I feel like I'm so old school in that. I don't want to play any new games. I just want to play old games.
You and me both.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I wonder, like, going on podcasts with RPG fan colleagues sometimes if I'm like bringing on too much old stuff,
Right.
or adventure games. But it's good to know.
Yeah.
I'm not alone.
Well, and I think I had heard the Distant Worlds performance of Dancing Mad, which of course is, iconic. That's one of the best performances of that piece ever. So I knew of it, but I wasn't really connected or attached to it until I played the game. And of course, lucky me, I beat Kefka on the first try.
Yay.
And that made me feel really good. And I think I just ended up getting inspired to do that piece. Now, I can't remember now if I recorded the whole soundtrack first, or if I think I must have done Dancing Mad first. Yeah, so that was my first Final Fantasy VI piece. And I was taking organ lessons at the time, or I had just previously been taking organ lessons. So the pipe organ was something that I was kind of into at the time. And I just started thinking, hey, I could make this arrangement where I perform the whole thing. And if I use the Piano Collections version as inspiration, and the Distant Worlds performance. So I would listen to it as I wrote my arrangement and kind of tried to figure out which parts would go for which instruments. I mean, like you said, Patrick, you said that whole idea of the piano being that percussive quality that the organ doesn't have. So, if you play it all on organ, I feel like you're missing that percussive sound of, especially, the Distant Worlds performance, but also the original. And so I just worked my butt off. I worked really hard. I would go to the church and I would just write music and I would play it and figure out which stops to use, which registrations to use. It was my first time ever using or writing music, really. I had not written many arrangements before that.
I was going to ask, because it sounded like you have a really strong sight reading background. So, that's so neat. I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah, well, I'm classically trained. And to me, I always used to say, classical music, there's every note in it is perfect. You don't need any more notes. So for me, it's like I'll just play it as is and it's brilliant, you know? And so I never really thought that I could make my own arrangements and make something unique. But that changed with Dancing Mad. And I actually hand wrote most of the arrangement until somebody directed me to a software that would do that for you with the use of a MIDI keyboard. And so I actually learned how to use that while I was doing Dancing Mad, but a lot of it was handwritten to begin with.
Wow. Yeah, that's absolutely impressive. To sort of have that start in the work of arrangement and transcription after sort of being performer only for so long. I think that shift as a musician can be very difficult. Some of the listeners know, my background is in piano performance and some dabbling in notation and composition. I've never really, I shouldn't say I've never touched an organ, but I'm no good at it. I find specifically the feet work, playing notes with your feet instead of just using a sustain pedal is the hardest thing in the world to me. And I actually, I very much appreciate that you do a lot of fancy footwork in a lot of your organ performances, not just in Dancing Mad, but especially in the Chrono Trigger work. Moving all four limbs seems very complicated to me, and you seem to do it very well.
Yeah, well, it's a beast of an instrument, and having taken lessons learning how to play it, I'm still definitely an amateur. I have to force myself to get good at these things. Doesn't come nearly as easy as the piano, which I've been playing my whole life. So I've had to really work at it and learn how to use it because it's definitely not in my nature to be able to do that like I can on the piano.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask about the process of recording over oneself. I imagine that's fairly difficult. Even if you have the aid of using a digital metronome, a click track, there's certainly also sections where there may be need for some sort of fermata or hold. And I feel like making these recordings where you're doing not just one performance, but two or even three, as we'll get to later with Chrono Trigger. I'm wondering, how did you manage that? And I'm also just curious, which did you record first between piano and organ for Dancing Mad?
So I went with the easiest instrument, which of course was the piano, and I did that also with Chrono Trigger. It just made it easy for me to get it out of the way, have it done, and then I would practice the organ over the top of the piano recordings that I had made. At the time, I think I was pretty naive, and I just thought it would be easy to layer tracks. I didn't think about the whole, process of actually doing that and making it sound good together. So that, of course, came later with the help of someone else. But when I first recorded it, I recorded that whole first part, and I would do count-ins. So I did not use a metronome with Dancing Mad. I did with all the Chrono Trigger tracks, but that's because I wanted them to be exactly as fast as the original soundtrack. So with Dancing Mad, I kind of just winged it a little bit. But
That's
I would
fair.
yeah. And I think it can be a little bit more. There's more fermatas, it's not a looped track as much as with the other ones.
Yep.
So I could count myself in, and then we would just delete the counts. And then the fermatas, I would just learn them. So I practiced it enough that I knew how long I was holding things for on the piano and how when to come in on the organ when we eventually recorded it.
That's incredible.
Wow. So it's almost like you're doing a ensemble work, but
well, I think of the organ is an orchestra to me. It's got that orchestra quality. So it does feel like you're making your own orchestra. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, the versatility of the organ is just wild. And we're going to get into this shortly, just how expertly you used it for your new Chrono Trigger work. Before we get to that, though, I did want to ask about one of the things that I've really been impressed about, you talked about your live plays and sight reading. This whole notion of like someone just throws you some sheet music, and it could be their own fan arrangement, or I know you often have used, like for Final Fantasy, the official piano collections, or sometimes there's like the do re mi transcriptions of OSTs and other forms like that. I've seen you use all of those at different times. When did you get into this work? And I imagine it started on Twitch, or maybe not, but this idea of like, I'm going to take requests, someone throw me the music, and I'm going to give it a go first try.
Oh, well, sight reading for me has been kind of, or was, I should say, a sort of a personal accomplishment. It wasn't really something that I felt like I could use in public. When I'm doing YouTube recordings, for instance, just like everybody else, I have to learn them. And even if I can learn them faster because I'm just sight reading them, in a sense, I'm reading the music, so it's a lot easier to learn. I'm still having to learn it. So it was more of a personal accomplishment. I never really was able to share it with anybody until I started to stream. And then that was a chance for me to just learn music live in front of people and use my skill for other people. So people will send me music. I have a special email for that, and they'll send me sheet music. It'll go through an approval process before it gets onto my list. And I have like 3,000 songs on there now.
Oh,
and
wow.
People will pick anything. So as long as it's on the list, I'll pull it up. And every once in a while, it's not good sheet music. So it kind of depends. And if it's not, I just say, okay, that wasn't good. Let's pick another song. But it's usually okay.
Well, one of the reasons, and I'm glad you brought up, running into something that isn't great. Sometimes you also run into things that prove very challenging. The first time, to my knowledge, that we actually referenced your work on our show was we did an April Fool's episode that was focused on all things Chocobo. It was all Chocobo themes. And I had been talking about the piano collection arrangements, and actually cited the Cinco de Chocobo from Final Fantasy VII. And I think someone else on that episode, mentioned that there were someone had, attempted it on YouTube, and that it was very challenging. And I was like, oh, I think that's Kara Comparetto. And I was right. And we actually found a video where you did a whole bunch of, I think it was a whole bunch of Final Fantasy VII tracks. And you were like, oh, this is my second time taking on Cinco de Chocobo. And the first time you took it on, that you remember it being particularly challenging. And actually, I'm proud to say I own physical copies of all those, like every single one of those FF piano collections. And among the few songs that I can't play from 7, that's one of them. I can't do it. And I don't think it's the 5/4. I don't think it's necessarily the time signature. I do just think it is a very advanced and very jazzy arrangement.
Yeah.
But I loved watching that video. Like on your second go, you're like, oh no, I got this. And then like you kind of knocked it out of the park on that second one.
Well, I'm glad you think so, because I'm now remembering which one you're talking about, which Chocobo piece it is. And that is a killer. Like I think I was faking a lot of that.
Yeah, you drop a few notes here and there, but as long as you keep time, like
I've definitely learned how to fake stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing about that sort of live learning and performance sight reading is like you like to do it well, like you cannot stop. Mm-hmm. Like you gotta just keep the song going, and if you missed a note, you missed a note, and you just go. And I think a lot of people really struggle with that. They're like, no, I need to go back and get it right. It's like, well, if you're performing it right now, like,
there's no opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, if you really screwed up, start over at a measured point or something. But otherwise, like, all right, I hit an E flat instead of an E natural, but let's keep going, right?
Right. See, that to me is the difference between learning something for YouTube and learning something on a stream. To me, the stream is so much more fun because I can play it, I can make a few mistakes and be like, oh, that was great. Oh, we could try it again. Or maybe I'll just be like, okay, that was the last time I'll ever play that. And then move on to something else. Whereas on YouTube, you have to practice those rhythms. You have to practice the coordination, the lineup of the left and the right to be accurate. And to me, it's harder. It's more tedious. It's not as fun.
Yeah, it is definitely more laborious to make these recorded entries. Though I think anyone who takes the time to check out your channel and see the work you've done, I think you can see the difference. And the live plays are so much fun. I think there's so much positive energy in those moments, and especially if you get live in your Twitch chat, there's so much positive energy there as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the recorded stuff is just so impressive to me. And I think that, over time, if you compare some of your earlier recordings to the most recent, there's also, I think, a step up. I don't know if it's a mix or just your confidence in performing, but my opinion is there's something very impressive about your latest release, which is actually technically an ongoing release, at least digitally, which is Chrono Trigger, played by Kara Comparetto, the official album.
Well, I was never a performer before, which is funny. I started uploading YouTube videos at age 28. And before that, I hated being on stage. I've always had stage fright. I've never really played live that often. I played concerts here and there, but, to me, that was the scary part of playing the piano. So in a sense, the recordings on YouTube are me making myself do something that's hard for me. And I think that I've learned a lot from that. And I keep at it because I think it makes me a better musician, and it just kind of rounds out my skills. Whereas if it were my choice, I'd just want to play live all the time.
Yeah. The live plays, I've been able to hop into streams from time to time and lurk as I do. And I've definitely been impressed with just sort of the nature, and I really want our listeners to consider checking out your live streams, because there is sort of this there's a sort of friendliness and sort of positive vibe. I think a lot about like hanging out at like a jazz club or a bar, and just like people making requests and like you being able to be like, yeah, sure, maybe, I don't know, and then like you play it or you don't, and there's a lot of humor, banter, there's a lot of back and forth, and I think that environment is really nice to work in. But then to like have to polish and produce something that's recorded is a lot more unsettling, and there's a lot more pressure.
And we will have links to both YouTube and Twitch and everything, so you can kind of see the difference and see all these different avenues, because it is really fascinating. These are all facets of performing music, right? And it's really interesting to look at all of them. So we'll make sure we have those in the show notes.
Absolutely. So, next I want to talk about your new album. This is Chrono Trigger, played by Kara Comparetto. You released a limited run of CDs that are already sold out. I had heard, I think it was 100 or maybe 150 copies that you made.
250.
250 and sold out. Incredible.
Yeah.
Sold out probably very quick, because I remember asking about details for it to populate a page on VGMDB right after I had placed my order. And as I was putting it together and listing the site where people could go to buy it, it was already marked as sold out. And I was like, man, I just barely made the cusp.
I should have listened to my CD designer, and gone with more. He kept saying, you could sell more, Kara, but I was too afraid. It's one of those things. CDs are, a lot of people don't use them anymore.
Yeah. And yeah, I think there was, people definitely were interested. And I'm openly boasting about the fact that I have a physical copy. It has quickly become a cherished entry in my library. I'm going to have a written review for this album. Hopefully it's either by the time this podcast is published, the review will either already be out or it'll be forthcoming. Spoiler alert, I really like it. That's the TLDR of the review. I'll get into the nitty gritty for anyone who wants to read that review, of course. Now, the way you're releasing it is really interesting to me. So the physical CDs, people who bought it were able to get that music early. Otherwise, right now, the album is not up for streaming because you're releasing the tracks over time, Chrono Trigger, on YouTube. And of course, I think you and I had talked about it privately via email, Kara, like the difference between the audio recordings and getting to see it in video. There's a big difference there, not just in, sort of the fun factor, because as you mentioned earlier, we got Luca on piano, Marl on organ, and then Ayla on harpsichord, which is just fantastic.
Mm-hmm. That's a great choice.
Yeah, they I just adore that, and I think most people love that. But also getting to see, just how technical and complicated some of the work is with your hands, and of course on the organ with your feet as well. In fact, I think as we're recording this right now, once we're done this recording, you'll be posting, is it Quarters of Time?
Yeah, best track.
Yeah, that's a fan favorite. Absolutely beautiful song. And I saw just last night, looking in my subscribe pages, it said, Quarters of Time is an upcoming video we're going to premiere. I think you've been doing Monday posts, and maybe were you doing some occasional midweeks as well?
Mondays only, and then every once in a while I'll post a short of some of the shorter, like a YouTube short. Yeah,
right, because there are some shorter items on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's a very, very cool thing that you've had going for the last few months, and of course it's going to keep going until you've released every track. At which point, I'm wondering, what plans do you have in terms of digital distribution? Are you going to have it streaming on other platforms? Are you considering selling it digitally? What are your thoughts there?
So hopefully by the time the podcast is out, or before that, it should be any day now, it will be available on my website to purchase digitally. I just kind of wanted to sell the CDs. It wasn't like a money-making scheme at all, because with CDs, it's a lot just to put into making the CDs. So
right, and you're lucky to break even. It's a passion project.
I really wanted people to have something physical. It's like owning the physical game. Lots of people love that. It's old school, like just having it in your hands just feels good.
There's a nostalgia factor, and I think there's a factor like for music collection too. I know, at least for me, like I'm always happy to have like the physical format as well.
Yes. So I'm planning to do that pretty soon, even before it's all released on YouTube. And then I have it scheduled to release on streaming platforms like at the end of September, which is about when the full video will come out with all of the tracks in one video on YouTube.
Wow. That's going to be a great video to watch. That's like just getting to watch a whole concert.
Yes.
Okay, so everybody plan a watch party.
Yeah, end of September watch party. Will you do like a live stream of the video on Twitch to like do reactions with chat?
Oh, I didn't think about that, but I'll be there at the premiere. So it'll be like a 2-hour, premiere on YouTube, and I'll be there and we'll be chatting. It'll be like a live stream.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exciting.
That's very cool. All right, well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to hear, one of the first tracks you released, because it is the Chrono Trigger main theme, and people are going to be able to hear it again. This is a piano and organ piece, and after that, we'll come back and talk more with Kara. All right, so that was Chrono Trigger, the song, and the song for theme for the game. We talked about the versatility and usage of the organ, and I'd like to hear from you, Carol, on the how you found the right sounds, I don't know the technical terminology for how you change sounds with the organ, but I know that it can sort of swap in for a lot of like synth pads used in these earlier games, and I'm wondering how you found the right sounds to kind of match up with what Mitsuda put into this lovely, lovely theme.
Well, I think if if Mitsuda had the ability to have a full orchestra for the original soundtrack for Chrono Trigger, I think he would have used one. But it to me, it sounds like he had one, or he had one in mind when he wrote the score, and when he did the recordings. I don't really know how it works. It's like 8-bit. Like there's only a certain amount of sounds that you can have within a game or something.
Yeah, there's technical limitations. The SNES actually was the beginning of software emulated sounds instead of hardware emulated. So it was 16-bit, and you could create sound fonts, but they were very compressed and very limited in scope. So yeah, they were essentially variants of MIDI synth, but like very, very compressed for the time.
Yeah, so even in Chrono Trigger, even though there were very limited sounds that Mitsuda could work with, if you think of an orchestra and you break it down into sections, like the brass or the strings or the reed instruments, that's, I think, how I got my inspiration to do that with the organ, because the organ has the ability to it has trumpet stops, for instance, and trombone stops. So anytime I heard something in the soundtrack that sounded like a brass instrument, I would use that particular stop on the organ. There are string stops, there are reed stops, there are flutes. And so depending on what I was hearing in the original, I wanted this soundtrack, my version of this soundtrack, to sound as close to the original as possible.
Yeah, and I think a really notable section is that break in the middle of the Chrono Trigger theme, right before the sort of the ending of the song. You get the melody like way up in the high registers, and that was clearly meant to be like woodwind or flute, and like you really nail it. Like that organ sounds exactly like the mix between what I've heard in orchestral arrangements and how it sounds in the like 16-bit original soundtrack. Like it's right where you want it to be. It's like that sound is like, I think anyone who knows this song, like it's just it hits you, because like when you scale back the music for that part, that softer part, and then you get that flute melody, it's just so nice.
Yes. Well, and the other thing that I really was making sure to be authentic to the original is the first of all, the notes. So all the notes that you hear in my arrangements are not mine. They're all Mitsuda's or Uematsu's, whoever wrote the track. And I made sure to put them in the exact octave that they were intended for. And that's how it worked to layer the instruments, because a lot of times you have melodies that cross each other, and that can't be played on one instrument if you're going to do them exactly as you hear them. So I was able to layer things on top of each other within the same octaves and pitches, just on different instruments. The other thing is that I found interesting about the original soundtrack that I tried to emulate was the actual lack of bass in the original. It's not super, super bassy. If you listen to something more modern, you would notice how much bassier they are. So a lot of times I would, pick a really heavy pedal stop, on the organ, and I would play it and be like, nah, that doesn't sound like the original. It's too much. It's too heavy. So even on some of the bigger tracks, like Chrono Trigger, for instance, I scaled back the bass. I did not play deep bass like you might think it should have.
Yeah, I think it's I think the track I'm thinking of is Primitive Mountain, with that do 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 do. That might actually,
Yeah.
like I think you use piano for that, and I think for a lot of the times that you do have to run bass for these tracks, you went piano with it, and I thought those sounded really nice.
Well, interestingly, we had a bass. We actually had an extra mic used on my piano for these. It was a bass mic, so we put the bass mic back behind my piano, and oftentimes we wouldn't even use that bass mic in the finished product because it was just too bassy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I gotta say, the work you did to put this all together. I mean, I'm wondering, can you quantify like how many hundreds of hours it was to, arrange, perform, record this whole album and video series?
I don't think I could put a number on it, but I can say that it took me a year.
Mm-hmm.
So from start to finish, I remember the first time I really started getting inspired with the project was, I believe, January of last year, so of 2022, I guess. And we basically finished everything, and the first video was posted January of this year. So it took a year. But interestingly, this is kind of an interesting fact about the inspiration for this project. When I finished Dancing Mad, I had a lot of great feedback from that, and people were like, oh, you should do this more often. And my first thought was, yeah, let's do the battle themes from Chrono Trigger. So I wanted to do the whole last Lavos battle theme. So World Revolution, the last battle, and Lavos' theme. Those were the three. And so I started writing this arrangement for organ and piano. And that was my first thought, was that it was just going to be those 3 tracks. And then it sort of morphed into this like, oh, if I can do these 3 tracks, I could do the whole thing. And I even shared 2 other soundtracks within that time period. I recorded the whole Final Fantasy VI soundtrack for piano and the whole Chrono Cross soundtrack for piano, and with the intentions of working on this massive project of doing the whole Chrono Trigger soundtrack, but it had to be right. I wasn't going to do Chrono Trigger without getting every note right, and you couldn't do it on just one piano.
Yeah, absolutely not. And of course, we do recommend, folks should check out, 6, 7, Chrono Cross, and then there's non-RPG stuff you did as well. I think, did you do Donkey Kong Country?
Yep, I'm coming out with a Donkey Kong Country 2 medley for organ and piano.
Wow.
Coming very soon.
Oh, those are great soundtracks. That's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, they're. I think they're sort of widely regarded as some of the best stuff that the Rare team ever did. It was that David Wise and 2 others. I think
Evelyn Fisher.
Like that British team did some really incredible music with the Donkey Kong Country trilogy.
And that's a whole other sound to kind of figure out. So it's exciting, and can't wait to hear your take on it.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited to see you do piano and organ, because I think the first game you released music for was just piano, right?
Yes, well, for me, the recording aspect of doing a piano is much, much, much easier. Once you start layering other instruments, and the whole production process of doing that is massive. And of course, I had somebody help me with that. His name is Jimmy, and he recorded all the organ parts for this project. He recorded the harpsichord parts as well. And of course, he has expertise in layering these and putting them all together. This is stuff that I didn't know how to do at the time. But I've definitely learned a lot. And I actually have my own organ now in my house.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
So I've been learning a lot about how to do that myself, and to layer instruments all on top of each other in, Logic and stuff.
Yeah. Where did you get access to a harpsichord? I don't imagine you own one of those as well.
I do own one of those. My dad built one when he was probably 30 years old. Yep. And my grandmother bought a kit for him that was like full of all the parts. It was a few $1,000s. And she basically gave it to him and said, "Can you build me a harpsichord?" And he built her a harpsichord, and it's upstairs in in our storage area.
Wow.
And I used that. My dad will tune it, which is great. It's great to have a tuner, because to me, that's one of the most important things about any recording, is to have your instruments spot on in tune, especially when you're layering them. But yeah, he used his.
Well, Kara's dad and also by extension grandmother, thank you. What a wonderful and lasting gift. And I've really I think I first fell in love with the harpsichord when it was used by my all-time favorite piano performer, Tori Amos. She used harpsichord throughout her third album, Voice for Pele, like extensively, and that was in '96. And ever since then, I've really had a fondness for the harpsichord.
It can be a tough instrument on the ear, which I also think the organ can be as well, and especially if you're not used to it. In small doses is a good starting point. I didn't use a lot of harpsichord in the Chrono Trigger soundtrack, but anytime I did, if you go back and listen to the original soundtrack, you'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's meant for the harpsichord."
That makes sense.
I think like some of the synths were actually meant to be actually harpsichords. Like I think
Underground Sewer is a big one.
Underground Sewer has it for sure. I could be wrong, but maybe Wind Scene?
Yep.
And
Peaceful Days is the
Days,
one.
definitely. Yep. There are a couple tracks on here where it just
First Festival of Stars has a big harpsichord part.
Yeah. So, well, people don't have access to that video yet. It's coming.
Mm-hmm. It's coming.
It's one of the last tracks. Really, really good stuff. So folks should definitely check out these videos, and we'll definitely have a link to your site where people can purchase the album digitally. Before we wrap up, I'd like to hear, do you have any plans right now for future projects? I know you mentioned Donkey Kong Country 2. Anything else you're eyeing? Anything down the line that you're interested in? It doesn't have to be RPG or video game related.
So yeah, aside from the Donkey Kong video that will be coming out shortly, I'm working on, in fact, I'm already almost there on finishing it up, but I recorded, I guess, like 50 songs on the piano, because I want to come out with some relaxing piano albums. And so I just sat at the piano and had my followers give me a list of all these songs, from different games: Secret of Mana, Illusion of Gaia, Xenogears, Xenosaga, Okami, of course, Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, those will be in there as well. And I'm also adding organ to those as well. So it makes it a little bit more unique, because part of the thing with the piano is that there's so many piano covers of these video game songs. Maybe not as many as we wish there were, but to make it a little bit unique. Yeah. To have, another acoustic instrument. Yeah, right, yeah, exactly.
An Illusion of Gaia cover is very exciting to me. Illusion of Gaia never even had an official soundtrack release.
No, and that upsets me to this
day. Yeah, the fact that that'll be among your arrangements and recordings is, I'm very excited to see what this lovely mix turns out to be. That actually is very exciting to me.
I wanted something that people could fall asleep to. A lot of my music is, you have to listen to it. It's not something that you just really put on the background. At least for me, it's hard for me to listen to Chrono Trigger without listening. But just to have relaxing music that's quiet, that you can fall asleep to, that was my intention there. And then the next thing I'm sort of thinking about, but I have to play the game first, and I'm partially through it, is a full soundtrack for Final Fantasy VII on 3 instruments. It's a big endeavor, but we'll see if I remain inspired.
That is huge. That's nearly 4 hours of musical content, if I recall. So that's and that would be piano, organ, harpsichord?
Right.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I just dived into heaven.
It's
Please
for me.
finish
It's
that project.
I have to figure out if I like the soundtrack enough. That's kind of why I'm playing the game. I want to
Mhm.
see if it's something that I can get inspired to do. But I do feel like the appreciation for Final Fantasy VII music is like through the roof. People absolutely love the music from that game.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask, as of now, where are you in the game?
What's that place? Nibelheim. I just got there.
Okay, so fairly early, probably about a third
Yeah.
of the way through.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
Yeah, it's
wonderful.
a great game.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Um,
you'll have extra inspiration to draw from with all of the remake stuff coming around.
Yeah, well, I'm actually, yeah, and of course that's, because it's coming out, I think it'll keep my music relevant, which will be really good. I'm playing the original though,
Mhm.
because to me, I want to play the old stuff. I don't care about the new stuff.
hey, amen. Give me the original. Give me
Yeah.
the original. Not to bash the remake stuff. I mean, I think there's definitely a good audience for it. But
Yes.
I'm more inclined to, if someone asked me, hey, do you want to play FF7? What is it? Rebirth is the first one,
Mhm.
or remake and then rebirth.
Remake
whatever
it.
they're
Rebirth
doing.
is Rebirth is the one they're working on
So
now.
do you want to play that, Patrick, or do you just want to play the original FF7 again? I think I want to play the original FF7 again. Don't tell anyone else. Everyone listening, don't tell anyone. I don't want to get in
Wow.
trouble for it. So, Kara, you've, I think most, if not all of what I've seen on your YouTube page is it's Kara as Kara, and sometimes it's Kara plus Kara, doing multiple instruments. I'm wondering if you have any interest in doing any collaborative work, either online or even locally. You had mentioned Purple Scala as a fellow pianist, and she is amazing. There's lots of other performers out there that play cello, or there's vocalists, though I know you can sing as well. That Over the Rainbow performance is really good. If people want to check it out, I know you've done a couple vocals on top of playing piano. But I'm wondering, have you had any desire or interest to work with someone else on a project?
So I have before, few and far between. I did do one with Smart Game Piano, actually a few with Smart Game Piano. We did some Octopath, we did some Dark Souls
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
stuff, like two piano stuff. In fact, she came to my house one time and we did a two piano version of something together, which was fun. I also did, I collaborated with Insane in the Rain,
Oh, yeah.
and I went down to his studio and recorded something for him. So that wasn't us together, but it was his arrangement that I played. And I would love to, but the part of the problem for me is I'm my connections. I don't know that many people. I don't go to conventions that often, so I don't know people. But if somebody were to reach out to me like you guys did, I didn't even know who you were. But now I was able to create a nice connection with you. We were
Aw.
able to collaborate together. I would so be up for that if I could find the right person, or if they found me.
Well, we know some people. We'll have our people get in touch with your people.
That sounds
They'll
great.
watch. Yeah, our people, your people. We can make that happen. I didn't know about the sort of double piano work that you had done. I definitely want to check that out. And Insane in the Rain is really great. Actually, I just saw this really recently. Square Enix published, like, on their official channel, a video where they had 8 different, like, cover performers and arrangers doing the main theme for Octopath Traveler 2, and it's cutting between them. So it starts out with the composer Yasunori Nishiki playing the main theme to the game on piano, and then it's cutting to these different versions, and they got Family Jewels doing the rock version, and Insane in the Rain's in there, and a couple others. And I was just really excited to see Square Enix giving appropriate and due recognition to these other artists on their official channel.
Yeah.
They've always been great about letting people make arrangements and recordings, and they're wonderful about that.
Yeah, I think they've definitely evolved in that perspective. I know that 10 and certainly 15 years ago, it was very much not the case.
Mhm.
But I think with the advent of streaming and broadband and digital sales and streaming of music, they, more so than a lot of other publishers, have really been on the ball about that. And not just in licensing and all that, but also like to give that kind of promotion actively like on their channel, I think is just really, really cool. You don't see that a lot. So maybe we can get one of these days we can get a Kara Comparetto video or a feature on Square Enix's music channel.
Hey, shout me out, share me, do anything. I tell my people all the time, that's how you get me out there. You got to share me and tell people about me. I want to get out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, you do have a fair following. I think last time I checked, is it 50,000 subscribers on
I think
YouTube?
so. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of your videos have far higher view counts than that. I've seen plenty of, 6-figure. I don't know. Have some of your videos breached 1 million?
I've never gotten 1 million.
Well,
I know, it's terrible.
I know. You feel like Dancing Mad should get you there.
It should.
Maybe Quarters of Time will get you there.
Maybe.
That's since it's so good. That or maybe Scala's theme. Both of those are just so freaking good. I'm personally though, since I've already heard the audio version, I love it. I'm excited to see the video version of Black Omen. I think that's probably one of my all-time favorite tracks.
That's fantastic, and World Revolution is my favorite.
And
so
World Revolution. Oh my god!
Do not miss that one. And you should see what it looks like. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, that's exciting!
Oh, very exciting. So, awesome! It's so wonderful to talk to you. Wonderful to virtually meet you today, Kara. Before we sign off, I'm wondering. We sometimes, when we have a special guest on, we like to give them opportunity to pick a song that will play out as the outro, as essentially our bonus track. So if you wanted, you could tell us what song you'd like all of our listeners to hear on the way out of this episode, whether it's one of your versions of a song or someone else's song. What are you thinking?
Oh boy, on the spot.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had the opportunity, I would probably shout someone else out, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
That's fine.
So I would just go with one of my Chrono Trigger tracks. One of my favorites.
All right.
About Peaceful Days.
Peaceful Days it is. All right. So at the end of this episode, you're going to be hearing Kara's version of Peaceful Days, which is one of the early tracks. For those who forget it, it's sort of the early town themes. It comes on right before Millennial Fair on the OST. So that's a fantastic one. And that one features all 3 instruments, right?
Yes, it does.
So we're going to be getting piano, organ, and harpsichord on this one. So everyone enjoy that. Before we head out though, again, this is episode 114. At this point, I don't know what's coming next because we recorded this well in advance. But we've had some great recent episodes that came before this. You want to check out episode 111 was musical games. I'm on that one. And then after that, we have Hilary. Do you know what we have after that? 112 and 113?
It's jazz and funk.
Oh, jazz and funk. It's jazzy. It's funky.
And those are the next 2 that we have.
Yeah. So there's some great stuff to listen to recently. So be sure to check out those episodes of Rhythm Encounter. Also check out other podcasts. We have Random Encounter and Retro Encounter. Retro Encounter is running every other week right now. And then Random Encounter is
also every other week, alternating with us.
Yeah, they alternate with our schedule. And so that's 3 different podcasts. Random's covering news, recent events, and also sort of a hodgepodge of whatever wants to be covered by the hosts. And Retro, we tend to do game journals covering games that are from the far past and sometimes the more recent past. So be sure to check out those as well. Please, if you're enjoying this, take the time to rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever service you use. That makes a difference in how many people hear or get opportunity to check out our show. So please take a moment to help us beat the algorithm. If you want to contact us, you can email us music@rpgfan.com. If you want to get in touch with me personally, you can contact me pgann, that's PGANN, @rpgfan.com, or find me on Twitter My handle is Gameadactyl. That's the word game, the letter O, and dactyl. Hilary, how can people get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is HilaryA@rpgfan.com.
Great. And then Kara, your opportunity. Plug all the ways people can get in touch with you or interact with you.
Just look up my name, Kara Comparetto. You'll find me on YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, Discord, everywhere.
Yeah, I must say, I actually, the way I got in touch with you to do this episode was I found my way onto your Discord server. And since joining, I have found, I think your Discord community is actually pretty awesome. So I just wanted to plug your Discord specifically. It's been a really great place, and of course your Twitch channel, wonderful as well.
Thank you.
All right, so I think that's about it. Check out the show notes so you can see links to all of Kara's her website, her YouTube, her Twitch, all of that. If you enjoyed what you heard today, there's so much more. There's literally hours and hours of great content to check out here. And again, there are a lot of people doing piano work, piano covers, and really love their work. I think there is something really special and unique though about adding in these other keyboards, and also I think the video production that you do, Kara, is really top notch. You've done some really cool stuff over the last few years, and we're hoping for more. All right, so again, we're going to go out on Kara's selection of Peaceful Days from her album Chrono Trigger, played by Kara Comparetto. So enjoying that piano, organ, and harpsichord. Everybody, we'll see you next time. Enjoy Peaceful Days.
Thanks for joining. Bye.
It's kind of funny with Chrono Trigger, the first main theme. I think people thought I was releasing the whole soundtrack when I posted like a premiere of that Chrono Trigger.
Right, it's complicated because it's the song title and the game title.
Right. Yeah. So I felt kind of bad premiering it. It was only like a minute and a half.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, I'm sorry guys.
Yeah, you're like, all right, well, here's here's a presentiment, and now
Yeah.
Chrono Trigger, and
Right.
they're like, oh, the whole soundtrack, and it's like, no.
Yeah.
There's another 60 or
Much
so
more to
songs.
come.
Yeah, you
to
got
do.
like 6 months to go
Yeah.
or more.